Welcome to the webinar, The Big Ugly Boondoggle's Impact on Montana. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Terry Minow, Chair of Big Sky 55 Plus. I was the political director of MEA MFT, now the Montana Federation of Teachers, and I'm a proud founding member of the Big Sky 55 Plus Board of Directors. I ranch with my family in the Boulder Valley south of Helena. And by the way, I'm a longtime member of Northern Plains as well. Big Sky 55 Plus was founded to give Montana's older people a strong voice in deliberations about our state's future. We bring people together to work for solutions that make life better for Montanans of all ages. We have had remarkable success in a few short years, working with lawmakers to pass good bills and kill bad bills, holding lawmakers accountable, and working to elect those who work for the common good. We also bring Montanans together in empowering events like our recent Social Security Roadshow and our Gathering Wisdom Building Power Conference last year in Billings. Mark your calendars for March 12th and 13th for the second one. As I said before, tonight's town hall topic is what we call the Big Ugly Boondoggle, but many people know it as HR 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill, or the Republican budget. We are fortunate to have three excellent panelists who will walk us through some of the issues that will affect our beloved Montana because of the passage of this bill, which sadly all of our federal delegation voted in favor of. If you have questions for any of our panelists, please put them in the Q&A box. You should find that link at the bottom of your screen. And so please remember to ask questions. We love to have questions. I know the panelists are excited to answer your questions. I'm going to hand over the Zoom screen to Kathryn Eklund, a Northern Plains member from Livingston, who's going to talk a little about tonight's co-host organization and in many ways our sister organization, Northern Plains Resource Council. Kathryn.
Thank you, Terry. Hi, everyone. My name is Kathryn Eklund. I'm a member of Northern Plains Resource Council, as well as the chair of the local chapter here in Livingston. Northern Plains is a grassroots community organization that works to organize Montanans to protect the communities and places that we all love. Our work as Northern Plains is aimed at supporting a healthy, localized, and sustainable economy in farm and ranch, in farming and ranching counties, and in the towns where others of us live. We also work on building strong grassroots leaders and encouraging leadership. We work towards a future where we live in harmony with nature, where our economy serves the people rather than the people serving the economy, and where our neighbors can work side by side to build a world that lives up to our ideals of fairness, inclusion, and justice. Northern Plains' roots are in rural Montana, where neighbors came together in the Bull Mountains to protect the land that was so special to them there. This fight continues today, as this legislation also includes some provisions that are, a direct gut punch to all of our rural communities. So we're so happy to have you all here with us. And we're super excited to be partnering with Big Sky 55 Plus in making this event happen. So Terry, we'll pass back to you.
Thank you, Kathryn. I look forward to hearing from you on the effects of the Big Ugly Boondoggle in just a few minutes. I just wanted to remind everybody again that if you have questions for any of our panelists, please put them in the Q&A box. Our first speaker tonight is Senator Cora Neumann, State Senator Cora Neumann. She earned a PhD from the University of Oxford and holds a Master's of Public Health from Columbia. She serves as the Chief Community Health Officer for a Native-led organization in Montana and was previously a senior advisor to the State Department's Global Women's Business Initiative. She was elected to the legislature in 2024 and has been central to many fights this past session. Senator Neumann, take it away.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Big Sky 55 Plus and Northern Plains and everybody who's taken the time tonight to be with us. Yep, my name's Senator Cora Neumann. I represent South Bozeman all the way down to West Yellowstone and the tip of Yellowstone National Park. So it's, part urban, part rural. I grew up in Bozeman, and I work in rural healthcare, as many of you know, because of the loss we had in my family due to lack of access to good health care. And so I'm very committed to making sure that just because you live in a rural area doesn't mean you don't have the best access to the best services. And we are so lucky in Montana to have one of the strongest rural health systems in the country. A public health system, a health services system. I serve on agriculture, public health, and the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. And so agriculture and healthcare are especially very, very close to my heart. So I'm going to give an overview of what we're facing right now. We were just in our pre-call here before we started our event tonight talking about how all of us are still just sort of swimming in all of the details of this bill. It is huge. It is complex. We keep uncovering things we didn't even realize were in the bill. And so bear with us as we try to give you overviews of what we understand to be in this bill and what's at stake for Montana. So unfortunately, because of this bill, we're at a crossroads. We're facing not one, but a convergence of three major crises that threaten the foundation of our healthcare system. And when you threaten Montana's healthcare system, you threaten our agriculture system and our local economies and our schools and everything else. So the first crisis that we started off with and we're here to discuss is the federal one. So HR 1, which we'll call it the big bad bill, which was passed with the promise of tax cuts, is not fiscally paid for, right? So we are cutting, the federal government is slashing and demanding new approaches to programs that is not going to be paid for, so that burden is going to fall onto us. It's projected to increase the national deficit by trillions of dollars and will trigger an automatic federal spending cuts called sequestration. And I don't know if you've heard of that. We can get into that, but in January 2026. An analysis by the Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that this will lead to a loss of between 2 and 4 billion over 10 years in federal Medicaid dollars for Montana alone for our health system. This legislation also directly impacts our state's budget. We just got a report from the Legislative Services Division, so that's where I'm getting these numbers, with an estimated loss of 114 million in annual state tax revenue. So a loss of 114 million due to the new federal tax cut deductions on tips, overtime, and car loan interest. Beyond that, the bill cuts 186 billion from SNAP federally and 213 billion from the federal marketplace. So other crucial services that are on the line. So that's going to have a major impact, and we'll get into that. I'm sure that maybe Northern Plains will talk about SNAP and the impact of that. Others critical services that I know a lot of my constituents and probably many of you know about are the low-income energy assistance program, and I think we'll get into that. So also it's going to impact community service block grants and the community development block grants. Those are also at risk of elimination. So that's the first one, is the federal one. The second crisis is here at home, and this is one that I deal with day to day. And my organization is actually Native American Development Corporation, run by Leonard Smith and Mary Walks Over Ice, based in Billings. And we have the Urban Indian Health Clinic there. So we have been feeling, the impacts of this, and it's just going to get worse. But over the last year, the Medicaid unwinding process showed us, and maybe some of you, I think we're going to have stories about some of us who have been directly impacted like this by this. The unwinding process has shown just how fragile our state systems are. 120,000 Montanans lost their health coverage, and a shocking 64% of them were kicked off for administrative or procedural reasons. So people who are eligible, and are many of them, we have members, clients, and patients at our clinic who are still have not been able to get back on, even though they're eligible. And then at the same time, our SNAP program has a payment error rate of over 8%. So that is, again, that's something that the state system is failing at. And because it's failing, it will cost our state an estimated 16 million annually in new penalties for benefits, and additional 8 million for administrative costs. So that's going to be a huge hit for SNAP as food assistance. And then, of course, the third crisis is a new state level threat. The administration is proposing a new Medicaid waiver that would introduce an 80-hour per month work requirement. But the problem is the plan to implement this policy by January 2026, months before a new mandated community assister portal, which Representative Howell passed a bill to set up a system that would help people actually go through the process of making sure that they can secure their benefits. That's actually not even going to be up and running until May, and yet our state is pushing to push a waiver through that would expedite work requirements in Montana. This is a recipe for administrative chaos and will push more eligible Montanans off the programs that they need. So these are, I know we're going to get into it more throughout the night, but these three crises converging simultaneously alongside, we have tariffs, we have inflation, I mean, the list goes on. But the impact that these changes and these new, I feel like they're, unmandated, forced changes in our systems that will cost our state and Montanans billions of dollars are going to put all of our systems at risk. And so I'm happy to get more into some of the potential legislative solutions that we're looking at, things I'm starting to discuss with, I'm on the Health Interim Committee, discussing with my colleagues. But we are starting to really brainstorm how we do have a budget surplus in this state. And we do have, the capacity to fix our system so that not as many people fall through the cracks, but we cannot rush it. And that's the problem. We are being forced to rush a very, very problematic solution to a non-existing problem. And so I'm happy to be here and to answer all the questions and to learn alongside you, because none of us have all of this figured out yet. So thank you for being here, and thank you for caring, because we're going to need each other.
Thank you so much, Cora. Well, we've got a couple questions here. One is, how can people, well, I'd love to have you talk just a little bit more about how the legislature, some of the ideas that people are working on in the legislature. I think that's one of the few hopeful things I've heard about this bill. So I always love to hear more about hopeful solutions.
Yeah, we have to try to find ways forward, right? Or you just get overwhelmed by the challenges. So, I mean, the one bright spot in HR1 is that we do have there is a new federal rural health transformation program. It's a one-time grant that guarantees Montana a minimum of $500 million for rural health care, but we have to apply for it strategically. And so making sure that we are, that I am and the legislature is closely monitoring and involved in the process of applying for and directing that funding. I think, that is an opportunity. I'd like to see us just develop, before the funding comes in, a comprehensive data-driven plan to secure all of that funding and make sure that we receive it. I think we also need to continue some legislative audits of the administrative failures of Medicaid and SNAP. Why are the errors in SNAP 8%? Why were 120,000 people kicked off Medicaid? So we have the ability to set up, a way to review and audit the systems that we have set up in Montana. I'm thinking about something like a rural sustainability fund, where we don't just spend and earmark all of that money right away, the 500 million. But we actually set it aside for crises and for, it's predicted that up to 8 of our hospitals could be severely affected and even close because of this loss of funding. So something like a stability fund. And then, just making sure that we are regularly auditing and why are our systems failing in 2025? We have, 1.2 million people and an entire state government. There's no reason we should not be able to. It's not, it's a fairly small population, right? And a fairly well-resourced government at this point. And so there's no excuse for us not having our data system set up so that people could easily access and process Medicaid and SNAP. So those are a couple of opportunities that we have.
Great. And we have more questions to ask you, but we'll go ahead and go forward with our next speakers and then come back. Hopefully we'll have time. So
Great.
Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who's Jeannie Brown. She's a member of Big Sky 55 Plus, who ensures that school children arrive safely at school and at home in her work as a bus driver. Jeannie is going to tell her story and how this bill is going to affect her and the approximately 37,000 other Montanans who could lose health coverage due to increased red tape. Jeannie is one of those people who make our society work. She never asks for recognition, but we recognize you, Jeannie. Jeannie, take it away.
Hi, thank you. for Northern Plains and Big Sky 55 for doing this webinar.
Jeannie,
My name is,
sorry, but your picture's not showing up. Did you want to put on your, there we go. Great. Thank you.
sorry about this. I'm on a phone, so I apologize, everybody. I live in Belgrade. My name is Jeannie Brown, and Medicaid is very important for me, and I got it through the Affordable Care Act. I quit my job from Gallatin County 17 years ago to take care of my disabled granddaughter. I did go on and adopt her. And for the first few years that I was taking care of her, I had absolutely no health insurance because the adoption subsidy that I got for her was around $800 at that time. And that was considered under income. And to qualify for Medicaid, it had to be $475 or less for me to get health insurance. And that's all my granddaughter and I were living on was $800 a month. And when the legislature finally did do Medicaid expansion, I was able to get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Over the years, I was slowly able to get a personal care attendant to help take care of my granddaughter, and that allowed me to go back to work part-time. I am currently a bus driver, and I work part-time, and I work anywhere from 17 hours to 22 hours per week. During the summer, I work for the YMCA, and I never work 20 hours in the summer per week. And as you can see from the hours, the new work requirements would definitely be a hardship for me. So to get the Medicaid with the work requirements, you have to work 20 hours per week. And so what happens is I will be on again and off again eligible for Medicaid based on how many hours I work that week. It's going to be an absolute paperwork nightmare to try and get coverage and to keep it when I'm eligible, and then they're going to drop me when I'm not. So every time I drop below 20 hours, I have to take a piece of paperwork to my employer and have them fill it out. And every time I go above 20 hours, I have to take a piece of paperwork to my employer to fill out. When I have to do that twice a year, I kind of get a dirty look. And I can't even begin to imagine because I could potentially be having to hand in a piece of paperwork once a week based on the changes in my work schedule. I don't know if there's any exceptions to the new rules because the big beautiful bill, as they call it, I call it the big ugly bill. Not all of it has been clearly laid out yet. So the real kicker to all of this is my granddaughter turns 18 in November, and I could lose my Medicaid anyway because she's technically an adult and not in my household anymore on paperwork. But she's still going to be living in my house. I'm still going to be a full-time caregiver. My granddaughter cannot work. So in theory, she should be able to get food stamps. But what I've learned with the big ugly bill is if you are single and you have children, you can only get SNAP up to the age of 7. But if you're married, you can get it past the age of 7. And I didn't know children became adults at the age of 7. So that is really disturbing to me. If you try to call Medicaid, or excuse me, you try to call DPHHS now for your Medicaid or for food stamps. I used to get food stamps every single summer. 3 summers ago, I spent 3 different times on the phone for over an hour and I had to go to work. So I lost my food stamps. Not because of anything I did, because I set the time for the calls, they called, and I sat on hold for over an hour, and then I had to go to work, and I cannot be on the phone driving a bus. So 2 things that I'd really like to point out is I am not unique. There are many caregivers in this state that are in this exact situation that I am in. The second thing I'd like to point out, being an unpaid caregiver, I am part of a $1.76 billion unpaid caregiver economy in this state. That's how much we contribute to this state. Being a caregiver is hard work and it takes a toll on your body. I have had 11 surgeries over the years, and I can only hope that I don't need any in the future, especially since I'm most likely I'm not going to have health care. I have heard over and over again that changes needed to be made because there is all this fraud, abuse, and waste, and that able-bodied people need to be working, and there's no excuse for this. I do work. In fact, I work at a job, and then I come home and I work at being an unpaid caregiver. Then I go back to work in the afternoon, and then I come back home and I work again. I am not lazy. I do not waste money or time, and I do not abuse the system. And I am quite frankly really tired of hearing that all of us are abusing the system, because we're not. I contribute a lot being the caregiver and also being a part-time bus driver. There is a huge shortage in bus drivers, and a lot of people can't do the job anymore because it doesn't pay enough, and you don't get enough hours to live in the valley. And everything is so expensive. It's getting worse and worse. And I think the part that frustrates me the most is every single person in our federal delegation voted to kick all of us off of Medicaid, just to give people that are very, very wealthy tax breaks, permanent tax breaks. I really, really want to encourage everybody who's listening to this to please get educated, please get involved, please talk to your neighbors about what is happening, because it's going to impact them at some point if it hasn't already, and it may impact them and they just don't know it's going to impact them. One of the things that Cora didn't talk about earlier, with that sequestration, everybody thinks Medicare is safe. Medicare is not safe either. There's going to be that trigger, and there's going to be cuts to Medicare as well. It's not just Medicaid. And there's going to be a lot of suffering in this country because our federal delegation voted for this bill that does nothing for everyday Montanans. Big Sky 55 and Northern Plains are going to have links on different ways that you guys can get involved and help, and I really encourage you to please do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannie. What a empowering or a frustrating story of how you have been such a great community member and asset to our community and to your family, and to have it all threatened by this terrible bill is very frustrating. Thank you for telling your story. Really appreciate it. We're going to go on and talk to Kathryn. Our next speaker is Kathryn Eklund. I would like to welcome her back with a proper introduction this time. Kathryn's background is in local government sustainability, low-income energy efficiency, and clean energy development. She's most passionate about efforts that emphasize cultural relativity and builds from the power of communities. Kathryn lives in Livingston, Montana, where she serves as chair of Northern Plains chapter in that area, Yellowstone Bend Citizens Council. She's passionate about protecting Montana's unique environments and communities so that the next generation can enjoy this special place as we have. Montana is lucky to have Kathryn. Kathryn, it's all yours.
Thank you, Terry. So I think like Cora said, this bill is super complicated. We're still tracking and parsing through things. So I will share kind of what we know in terms of how it's touching down from an energy perspective in Montana. But I'm by no means 100% expert in this. So yeah, but first off, we'll just go over like a quick Montana energy landscape overview for folks. As we know, our utility, continues to prefer kind of dirtier, pricier forms of power. This means that normal families have very, very high energy bills in the state. We were seeing more big data centers try to come in, which is going to, require building out massive plants and ways to power what they're wanting to do. And our energy costs are just continuing to rise, and the impacts are, confounded by everything else in the state being more expensive as well. So under the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law, we had a really special, unique opportunity and moment where the federal government was finally looking at the energy landscape and rural America and saying, like, you know, this is where we need to invest. This is how we're going to advance the adoption of these things and really support and encourage our rural economies. So we had the 30% solar tax credit, which has been kind of in and out over the years, threatened or not. That was secured. There was also a portion of that that was a direct pay option that allowed nonprofits who were not, taxable entities to have access to that 30% credit. So that was like a brand new system that was going to, open the playing field for nonprofits to access solar. We in Montana also had kind of an emerging, developing home energy rebate program that I personally was super excited about to, work on energy upgrades in my home, increased insulation in our floorboards, like all sorts of things, just having some government and state assistance for that to happen for families who income qualified. We also had the electric vehicle credits for both used EVs and new EVs, which also really opened that market to folks who aren't buying brand new vehicles. And then Cora touched on this as well, but the low income heating and energy assistance program that was run by our various social service programs and agencies across the state, and for folks and families that income qualify, they would get assistance every winter on their heating bills, which I worked for that program for one winter, and it was a legitimate lifesaver for people over 55, for people with young children. All of that program has been is gone. And then also, with the direction that we were headed as a nation, there was so much potential for emerging clean energy economies, emerging clean energy development within the state, and just increased access for folks who generally, under the traditional pricing and just what the clean energy used to cost, all these programs were making it more affordable for regular Montanans. And just a little bit of additional context. By August of 2024, the U.S. had seen a $265 billion investment in clean energy in a 2-year span. So that's a really big moving train to then be derailing. Kind of more specifically in Livingston, as the Northern Plains chapter there, we were able to get access to $250,000 of one-time funding through those 2 bills. This allowed us to put free of charge for the nonprofits. We put solar panels on 6 different groups within town. This includes affordable housing units, county facilities, and our food resource center. And then we also, we were working up with energy auditors who had moved to town, who were starting new businesses, who were going to help with these home rebates. We were also working to figure out with the nonprofits we work with how to get access to that direct pay. And we were encouraging, just local standard business or homeowners to take advantage of that 30% credit, as we've been tracking through the years the expansion of solar within our community through this mapping software. So all of that, was supported by and kind of allowed to happen through that funding in the direction that the government was headed. Like I said, HR 1, this bill really stopped all of that, which is very, very disheartening. All told, HR 1 puts $500 billion of investment in clean energy and transportation at risk of cancellation and just being clawed back and ripped away. And I think, additionally, it just adds so much uncertainty into the market, at all levels. That's what we're hearing from folks is you can't make business decisions. The state doesn't know what to do with its programs. Everybody's just kind of holding their breath. And that's not the kind of market environment that you want to be creating for folks. And it also, like I said, it really just means that people who stand to benefit the most from these kind of clean energy programs are going to have to wait to access it because we're no longer providing rebates and incentives to make that happen for them. So, yeah, I think that's what I got.
Thank you, Kathryn. So question for you, just talk a little bit more about the benefits that you saw in Livingston to the local economy and to the people of Livingston when these projects were underway.
Yeah, I'll just speak to one project specifically. The Livingston Food Resource Center serves, it's a food bank in town that serves an increasing number of folks. Like every year, their numbers just skyrocket of the people utilizing their services. And they ran the stats. Every dollar that they saved on not having to pay their energy bill if they had solar is like a pound of food that they could provide to the community. So, that's a massive benefit to our local farmers and ranchers, as well as the people utilizing those services and systems. And it just makes our community less impactful on the environment as well. So, like triple wins in that one.
Thanks, Kathryn. So we're going to move on to our last speaker, who's Trent Bolger. He's the executive director of Big Sky 55 Plus, and he's going to cover some of the more technical parts of the healthcare related issues caused by the Big Ugly Bill. Take it away, Trent.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Just give me a real quick second. I'm going to share a slideshow real quick, if I can get all the things out of my way to start the slideshow. I'm the executive director, as Terry mentioned, of Big Sky 55. I get to call myself by that title. I'm actually also going to start a timer because I can go forever on this subject. So I'm going to try and keep on track. One of the things I want you to know about this is this is from my presentation tonight. I want you to take away that this one big beautiful bill is the largest cut to healthcare and food assistance in history. And it's all to give tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. That's what you need to know. It's a value statement. They value millionaires and billionaires over the people who need the most help. I think you just need to take that away from today's thing. Not only that, but I think it's also something that is important to kind of like all the people that are on this call probably think that there's a moral obligation for people to have access to health care. But I also think that they're putting it in a sort of an economic and fiscal frame for our friends and neighbors might be easier to talk to them about it. So not only did they cut, $1 trillion out of Medicaid and hundreds of billions of dollars out of nutrition assistance and a bunch of money out of rural care to give billionaires and millionaires taxes. All your friends that say they vote fiscally conservative should be angry about this bill as well, because it's kind of impressive. They made all these cuts and they added $4 trillion to the national debt. That's the equivalent of every man, woman, and child in America getting a $12,000 loan taken out in their name. So I'm kind of angry as a father that my 11-year-old has a $12,000 loan all of a sudden taken out in her name to give to Elon Musk for whatever the heck Elon Musk does, right? So your neighbors should also be upset about that. I think Dr. Neumann, Dr. Senator, she's playing both roles tonight. Dr. Neumann is talked a little bit about what we're going to lose out of this as far as federal funding. Also, I want you to be aware that it's not just these folks that are quote able-bodied young men that are going to lose coverage. The Healthcare Foundation, Montana Healthcare Foundation, estimates at least 4,000 elderly children or disabled people are going to lose coverage. And then down here in probably like the third bullet point, I want to point out that when Montana providers lose $2.6 billion and they'll incur $1.2 billion in uncompensated costs, that's money they're going to make up out of your pocketbooks, whether it's in direct costs paying your provider, or it's in costs that they're going to bill your insurer, and then you're going to make up by paying higher insurance premiums. And then, of course, we're going to, backslide on all of the good things we've made good progress on like substance use disorders and behavioral health. I think there was a question in the chat earlier about which hospitals are at risk here in Montana. These are the most at risk, right? These 8 that are listed here according to the University of North Carolina. Down here, Brown University also says about 575 nursing homes nationwide. There's 2 on their list there. I think that's probably the tip of an iceberg for us. When we were out touring on our Social Security tour, we had a mom and pop kind of nursing home owner come out, and she said, the model doesn't work anymore. We're putting it up for sale. So I don't, and they weren't on the list, right? So I think where we could see more, and we've already seen in the past 5 or so years some really terrible numbers on nursing home bed closures already. So with that, I want to just kind of point out that rural care wasn't in a great place before, and we could actually be seeing the tip of an iceberg. So I went out there and I looked at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid service data. Hospitals that take federal money have to report this data. So on this, 21 of Montana's 61 hospitals just didn't turn a profit at all last year. They didn't make money at all. If you look a little further into that data, 31 of Montana's 61 hospitals didn't turn a profit on patient services margin. What that means is like the things you think of hospitals doing, right? They give you health services, right? They provide you care, and then they charge you for that care, or they charge your insurance company, or they charge federal programs for that care, right? They didn't make a profit on those 31. And not only that, on top of that, 8 of them didn't make a profit that was beyond what you could just do by investing that money in, say, a US Treasury bond. So if you're sitting on a corporate board or an investor group for a hospital out there, you kind of start to think, well, maybe it's not worth it to provide federal care. So this map down here at the bottom here is the 31 hospitals that didn't turn a profit on providing care or providing services that we think of as what a hospital does. And I want you to notice that it's not just small town hospitals. There are some big city hospitals on there as well. So there's a website that's tracking all of this kind of in real time. It has the at-risk hospitals, and because healthcare is a business, they're not waiting for these cuts to actually hit to announce like restrictions and closures and ward closures and actually closing facilities. So if you go to protectourcare.org, you can kind of track this in real time all the way across the nation. See all these yellow dots? Those are hospitals that are going to close. The black ones are ones already closed. That's kind of crazy. One of the things that I really think about all the time now that if you came to our Social Security tour, you saw this. I totally stole this from Alex Lawson, but he's brilliant, so I'm going to steal it from him. So what you're looking at is on the left, the map, the mustard and teal kind of map. That's what our economy essentially looked like in the 90s. We used to make, buy, and sell things to each other and the rest of the world. On the right, if you look at it, that's the share of the wealth that either the 1% or the middle 60% of the people in America held. And after all these manufacturing jobs left the country through the 90s and early 2000s, you see this eclipse where the top 1% took more wealth, have held more wealth than the middle 60% of the country combined. So why am I showing this to you when I'm talking about healthcare? Well, it's because of what our economy looks like today. Our economy looks like the purple map on the right-hand side. So I want you to take a minute and think about what happens. All the purple, by the way, is a healthcare economy. Once kind of these manufacturing jobs went away, a lot of jobs popped up in the healthcare sector. So we recentered our economy around healthcare. So I want you to take a second and think about what happens in the purple country here if you take out $1 trillion in Medicaid and then force through I always called it pay-go rules, $500 billion, $493 billion worth of a cut in Medicare. What happens to the healthcare economy in those purple areas? Well, I think you probably thought about it more in that half a second than all of the Republican congressmen that voted for this bill. Because all the really smart people that I talked to, all the really smart healthcare economists that I talked to, really don't have a great idea of what's going to happen, but the only approximation they can figure out is essentially what happened to the industrial Midwest after manufacturing jobs disappeared. So think about the Rust Belt, but in everywhere in the purple area of the country here. And that's the situation that we have before us. So end with hope real quick. What can we do? We can get some of that money that Dr. Neumann was talking about. Call your federal representatives, call the governor's office. They should get every penny that they can on those. The other thing I think that's important is we can help each other on this. So I will be quiet now and turn it back over to Terry.
Thanks, Trent. Wow, that's a lot to think about. So one of the questions that was asked is, how can we get our local government engaged in preparing for these impacts and pushing back on state government to make sure that people understand that these are issues that are going to affect everybody in our communities? Cora, do you want to take a whack at that?
Sure. I mean, I think that one of the levers that we have, obviously, is our voices, and local governments do have, we do hear, you have your own local laws that you pass. The other thing is just demanding accountability. Why did 120,000 Montanans get kicked off of Medicaid? Why were 64% of those claims due to procedural errors? Show us the data. Show us that you have a system set up that is going to allow, our neighbors to be able to access and process. I mean, we had Jeannie talk about how she sat on the phone for an hour and had to go to work. We have people that are sitting on the phone for 8 to 10 hours and it's still happening. We have a 45-day average wait time to get back to re-enroll if you can even access the services. I believe that we start right now in this moment by saying, show us the data. Show us that you have these systems set up, because you can't ask us to get behind you on something like expediting this process of starting work requirements in Montana 1 year earlier than the rest of the country when we have the worst system in the country. Like, what is this, a joke? Like, we are not stupid. We are watching, right? And so I think all of us, individuals as citizens and residents, and also, local governments and we as legislators need to say, we are, we can't have, we demand accountability, and we will be loud if we don't get it. And that's more of a, activism perspective on a law-based and procedural perspective. There's a whole nother list of things that we can do. But I think that right now in this moment, and I'd love to hear Trent's perspective as well on that, because he's been really immersed and he's been visiting all of these communities. But they do not, from my perspective, they don't have the right to expedite this process when we still have people who can't access coverage when they're eligible.
Trent, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dr. Newman's I always defer to Dr. Newman in many things. I also think in this matter too, what we can do about trying to keep our local officials accountable is get kind of third parties to push on them, right? that's why I kind of put this in an economic frame. If your Chamber of Commerce is not freaked out by this, they ought to be, plain and simple, because doctors are like little tiny factories in all of these communities. They generate like $2 million in economic activity for every year.
Per doctor.
And once per doctor. And so once they leave, they're highly skilled individuals, and they can just pick up and go. Once they leave, they're not coming back to a small community. They're not coming back to a larger community. I mean, Great Falls sometimes doesn't have cardiologists, right? So, these types of things really disrupt how economics in a city happen. And so if your third-party validators, like your Chamber of Commerce, is not freaked out about this, they ought to be. And they ought to be talking to your local government and your state officials and the governor, because they have a lot more say than I do with some of these folks. So that's what I would say.
So we've had some questions about if this information will be available. There is a recording that will be posted on our website and probably on Northern Plains as well website. And the numbers, somebody asked for all of the numbers of our elected officials, our governor and Congress people asked that we show that again. I think that somebody else said that it would be great if we had this presentation in every county in Montana. And I think we have to be the people who bring the information forward and point this information out to people. I really love something that Cora talked about, that we can maybe do as individuals, is start thinking about who of our neighbors is going to be the most affected by this. And maybe we can reach out to them as well. As you know, there's a lot of people who aren't great on computers and who aren't great, they just don't have the time. So maybe we can individually help as well. But I think Big Sky 55 Plus in Northern Plains has a very active, easy way for people to be involved.
Trent, you mentioned PAYGO. I do think that could be a place where people could call representatives and their legislators so that we know about it, because we're all learning, like I said, in real time. Is there a way that our federal delegation can impact or stop or propose a way? Yeah, I don't know if you want to chime in on the PAYGO and explain what that is, because that's one of those things where there's more cascade effect on our budget that we don't even know about yet because of these triggers.
Yeah, and this is a really nerdy piece of this, but PAYGO is what it was meant to be is a government reform kind of rule that they had. If you're spending too much money, or if the government's not bringing enough money in, there's automatic cuts to ensure that we aren't overspending. But because they gave away so much money to billionaires in this bill, what's actually going to happen is our revenue is going to drop in the 6-7 years from now kind of area, so low that they're automatically going to cut billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, almost $500 billion in Medicare by law. So, and it's just a law, right? They can change it. They could put it in a package tomorrow. They could put it in the federal budget that they've got to pass before October 1st. But they can change it. I mean, it's just a federal law. But right now, as it stands, automatic cuts.
So one thing I would like to say is it's really important that that all of us be very involved in politics. Politics, not only nationally with our Congress people and with statewide, but also in our local communities. And that's one way that we could put pressure on our elected officials. And they need to hear these stories. They need to hear stories like Jeannie's. People in her community, the elected officials need to know this is a person who's valuable to my community. She's going to suffer because of a really bad bill that was passed. And so Lila's going to show us a little bit. I don't think it's ever too late. I think that it's, somebody asked if it's too late. I think that we need to keep pushing forward, and we need to bring these stories to our elected officials and be ready to vote when we have an opportunity to show how we feel about what they're doing. But Lila, do you want to show us the go ahead.
Yeah, I can go ahead and show you. This is Big Sky 55 Plus's action page, which is on our website. And you just go, it's the tab up at the top, Take Action, is what you click. And this is, constantly changing depending on what issues are highest right now. But it's super easy to use. This particular action is Senator Neumann had mentioned that there's this emergency fund that went along with the passage. Well, it was part of the reason it got passed, was that they offered this to some rural red states. And so that's part of the reason this even got passed. But there's money that's going to be available to rural states to help with the potential closures to help prevent potential closures of hospitals. So for this one, it's tell your members of Congress to prevent the closures. Basically, we do need to apply for it, as Senator Neumann mentioned. So you can read the backgrounder there, and then you just click Take Action, put your street address in. I live in Missoula. And you click Go, and then it has the backgrounder again, and it shows who your message is going to go to. If you don't want it to go to one of these folks, you can just unclick the box. You put your contact information here. You can change the text of the letter if you'd like, and then you just go ahead and hit send. So it's quite easy. So we have on our website, we've got one about the DPHHS jumping the gun on the work requirements. The public comment period for that is passed, but I think the more they hear that people are aware of it and are angry about it, the better. So pass it back to you.
Great, thanks, Lila. So on the chat, there's a link to our website to sign up for our weekly email updates and to also join Big Sky 55 Plus. If you're not a member, no matter your age, you're invited to join. If you're not 55 yet, we'll give you a non-senior discount. Your suggested contribution is your age. As Joan Baez said, action is the antidote to despair. Big Sky 55 Plus gives us the tools to take action together. There will be a second No Kings set of rallies happening around the state on October 18th. Please join us to rally against unchecked presidential power and for our democracy. I'm going to turn it over to Kathryn to conclude her part of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And as we all continue to navigate what these changes mean for our communities and our state, it's important that we remember that we can all be organizers. Change requires ordinary people getting involved and coming together to demand the change that we want to see. And being engaged can look a lot of different ways. It could mean having a conversation with your neighbor about this bill, thinking about what you can do to help them on an individual basis, attending and clipboarding at the No Kings rally on the 18th that Terry mentioned, or getting a group together in your community to plan, ways to engage those third parties and encourage them to push back on this bill. One thing that we will share with you right now in the chat is a link to a survey that Northern Plains has put together. This is just trying to capture what folks are thinking about HR1, kind of what direction there's energy where we can keep pushing back on this and working together to protect our communities. It doesn't take too long, and it's a tool that we can hopefully use to build a really broad base of Montanans. And that's what we're going to need to push back against this. So we really look forward to working together with all of you here tonight. And thank you again for coming. It's great to have over 120 people here who are prioritizing this and have it still front of mind, even though there's so many other things happening. So Thank you. And yeah, we hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you so much. We look forward to working together as we use our superpowers to make Montana a better place to live and work and thrive. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good evening, and thanks again for being with us.